Welcome back to another episode of George in the Jungle. George Vogel is my host. I am Aaron Smith. We cover Cincinnati sports here, including the Bearcats, the Reds, the FC Cincinnati, high school sports, the Bengals, of course, as an homage in the title. But we are covering this past week, and away we go. George, good to see you again this week.
Good to see you, Aaron. What another eventful weekend it's been, and what a great scene Saturday on the campus of the University of Cincinnati.
Did you make it to the game?
Oh yeah,
It was loud.
yeah. It was. I'll tell you what, they were juiced up, ready to go. They had the big noon thing in town. I didn't go over to that staging area, but I watched a lot of it before I left to go to the game. And I'll say this: these Cincinnati people, they show out when something like that hits town. They don't hold back. They go after it.
They do, and you'd absolutely love to see that. I think Tony Pike said it was a top three environment that he's ever been around, and he's certainly been around some big games. Um, Chad said the same thing. Again, a top three. I know Satterfield led off both his post-game presser and his presser today with just a hat tip to the environment. And you love seeing a new staff, new coaches, a team that Oklahoma's never been in Nippert, I don't believe, at least not in any
No,
recent history.
no. When they came
Um,
to Cincinnati, they played at Paul Brown about roughly 10 years ago.
I just didn't know if they had played it any time way
Yeah, I don't
back.
think so. I don't think they have ever been at Nippert Stadium. And I, you know what, I wanted to ask some of those fans. There were a lot of Oklahoma fans that showed up too, and just what they thought of that because they're used to a bigger stadium and all that. But everyone that comes into this place and hasn't been there before is just kind of blown away about how intimate it is there, but still very loud, a lot of fun, and just parked right in the middle of campus buildings. And it's got to be a shock to a lot of first timers to walk into a stadium that's situated like that, right smack dab in the middle of campus.
Yeah.
You see classroom buildings around, dorms around, and those big buildings around it, and the big press box, TUC behind that, keeping that sound in. It's got to be quite the experience for those people. I guess I guess I was just kind of mad at the Oklahoma fans when they were able to rub it in a little bit there in the fourth quarter. So I didn't really ask anyone about the experience. But other reports I read said everyone was pretty impressed with what they saw there on campus.
Yeah, and that comes as no surprise. We're accustomed to seeing this where people see a 40,000 person stadium on the schedule and they're like, oh, this will be a piece of cake. There's not going to be
Right.
anybody there. And everyone is always just perplexed as to how a 40,000 person stadium is that damn loud,
Yeah.
that much energy, and especially by comparison with a lot of these, 60, 80, 100,000 person stadiums that are rivaled by historic Nippert Stadium.
Yeah, it's really a special place, and I'm glad people are appreciating that now. It wasn't always so special. They didn't always get those crowds, that's for sure. And
Right.
hell, the place was, you know, partially condemned at one point, and they didn't know what they were going to do back in 1990 when they were trying to figure out what do we do. I remember talking to Tim Murphy, the head coach back then, about it. He was in on like some of the redesign, what they may or may not do, and if they would just he was in favor of like kind of filling in the old stands completely with concrete and making it even more of a vertical bowl. But they did a little cheaper renovation back then, just trying to keep the program afloat. And my goodness, it's like a Fenway Park or a Wrigley Field, as Brian Kelly used to call it, of college football. It's definitely a special place, and it's great to hear people who haven't seen it before and some of their comments and their surprise at what's going on there, because it is crazy.
Well, let's get to the game itself, as Cincinnati has back-to-back home losses for the first time, I believe, since 2017.
Yep.
and they do fall to Oklahoma 20-6. Another game where they have struggled to punch the ball into the end zone with one touchdown now in the last 2 weeks. They did hit 2 field goals as they missed the first field goal of their 3 attempts. And then they had one drive that was inside the 20, that ended inside the 20. And that one, they went for it on 4th down. Otherwise, they potentially could have had another field goal. But
yeah, the offense, they've got to finish. They've got to finish. They just don't finish drives. We talked about it with Miami. Obviously, the Oklahoma defense is pretty tough, but UC was able to move the ball some. They were able to get some drives going. Let's see what bothered me. I mean, I got a list of things that kind of bothered me.
Hit me with it, George.
Well, first, I hate to single out college kids and all that. The whole offense was a little shaky across the board, but I think, Emory Jones didn't look great early on. I think the line was having some issues early on. That was probably part of it. He seemed like he maybe settled down. He got in a little good rhythm there late in the first half and actually some of the second half. But 10-3 in the second quarter, right? UC's down 10-3. They got the ball on the 26-yard line going in, but 3rd and 12, an interception in the end zone. And Jones took all the blame for that. He, threw back across the field when he had 3 receivers on the other side. And Coach Satterfield talked a little bit about that in the post game as well. And that's a mistake in an Oklahoma game you just can't afford. If you're going to take down a team like that, you can't make those kind of mistakes. So
I agree.
They finished with 235 yards, 22 of 41. That's just not good enough. Obviously a drop or 2 in there, but I thought he could play better for sure. No doubt about it. Although I did think he didn't get a lot of help from that line. Another thing that bothered me, okay, late in the third quarter, you still got a ball game going. They got a drive going with a couple of nice runs, a pass to Corey Kiner. They had the running backs going a little bit there, and they're driving. They get it, I think Jones may have gotten 8 yards, or maybe it was a pass to Kiner. They get it to 2nd and 2. They're on the 20-yard line, 2nd and 2. And instead of keeping those running backs involved, they go to 2 Jones, designed runs that netted 0 yards. And then on 4th down and 2, incomplete pass to the tight end Singletary. So that sequence bothered me. I think they got those running backs going. They should have kept using them in that situation. I think it's 2nd and 2. You just keep doing what's working. You finally found something against that Oklahoma defense. And I felt like those play calls kind of busted up the rhythm they had and, quite frankly, cost them what was a pretty good drive up to that point. But, the biggest thing, just not finishing these drives. And they've got to find a way to get that done because, it's not going to be easy Friday night at BYU if they do that. In fact, they'll lose again if they do that. And I thought defensively they played very well. I was big on the defense and what they did for the most part. A couple of complaints there. But back to that offense before I get too deep into what they did defensively. And I thought they did a really good job. Your assessment of Jones and what you saw out of that offense and kind of the same old of not being able to finish drives.
Yeah, Chad and I, we did the nightcap after the game, and then we did the BBP last night. And I'm on record saying repeatedly, just offensive line, I think, is really where this whole thing starts. I don't think it ends there, but I think where this issue on offense starts. I think that you have some trickle down to run games looked over the course of the season, over the course of the last 2 weeks even, has looked above average. It's looked good. I won't go great, but I think it's looked good. But I think Emory is nervous. He had PFF had him as 31 hurries this week, and when you're hurried that many times, that's not all on your quarterback.
Yeah, it's a total jailbreak. Yep.
And it's hard to make reads. So, that happens. Say that happens, I don't know, a half dozen times, a dozen times, and you're not going to be in any type of rhythm to where you're able to make your checkdowns, to where you're able to read through your progressions, to where you're able to find the open man. You're running for your life. You're
Right.
trying to stay upright. You're trying to protect the ball. And when you're being pressured that many times, it's not going to be it's easy for us in the stands to say, oh, there's a guy open there, because we can see the whole field at the same
Right.
time.
And you don't have someone bearing down on you.
Right, when there's no one breathing on our necks. So I don't know. For me, it's I don't want to say I'm giving Emery a pass, because I do think that he's holding himself responsible in the way that he's talking. I also think that he absolutely believes that. I think Scott Satterfield believes that Emery could be making some better decisions as well. He alluded to that in his presser today. But I still think that it starts with that offensive line. And if they're not giving him the opportunity to be successful, you're going to struggle to find success in this offense.
Yeah, and look, he doesn't get consistent help in that running game either, and we know where that starts because these running backs are pretty darn good.
Right.
When they get a crack, they usually get the yards they should get on that play, but it's just, man. And I think Coach alluded to that they've got to, they're not going to find it this year, the depth for the offensive line, but that's something the program needs to take a step and compete at a high level in the Big 12. And right now they're not there. They're just not there. So that's going to they're going to have to figure out ways to, maybe get the ball out quicker. I don't know what else you do with that running game that they haven't tried, but, and they're not going to be going against a defense like Oklahoma's every week, but it didn't work against Miami last week either. I mean, that tells you everything you need to know right there.
Yeah.
Positives, defense, I thought for the most part played very, very well. I mean, Dorian Jones had the big game. Ken Willis making his first start.
Yeah.
On pace in the game. Willis seems like he's certainly a keeper based on what we saw. I don't know that PFF graded him all that great, but the kid was seeing his first action as a starter, and he made
against Oklahoma.
Yeah, exactly. And he made some plays. And the Godfather is the Godfather. And when he was in there, he was making a difference in that game. Oklahoma had a lot of trouble controlling that guy, and everybody's going to have trouble controlling him. And when he went down for a minute there, oh my God. I'm just like, everyone's like, God, that's him. That's the Godfather. It's him. Thank God he got up, walked off, got a couple Cholitos, and was back in the game doing this because he's a play. I mean, my God, he's UC's Aaron Donald is what it seems like to me. He's a line wrecker. What did bother me? Okay, a couple things bothered me defensively, and everyone at the time saw it. You got a team backed up on their 3-yard line. It's 3rd and 18 or whatever it was, and you give up a 19-yard run. And I heard the linebacker Megan Greshik was talking today, right?
Yeah.
And he said that they looked at everyone was fit and in their lane. I don't know what happened there, but there was a lane this guy found nobody was in, and that was a backbreaker because not only did they get out of that hole, they get down and get a field goal out of that drive. And that
Chad, what's going on with your volume?
Kelsey's on the phone with her grandma. Real quick, I want you to guess the exit velocity on the home run that Ellie De La Cruz just hit.
Oh, Lord.
115.
No.
Higher.
117.
No.
Higher?
What?
119.2.
That's insane.
That has to be the hardest ball ever hit, right? Like,
certainly since I've been keeping those kind of stats.
119.2.
I think Acuna had the hardest hit ball earlier this season
at like 116.
Did a fan catch it? Or did it break the back of the field?
It looked like it dented the back wall in Cleveland.
I wish I would have hit that damn drum they used to have up there when they were called something else. That guy sat up there and beat on that drum. Oh my God. Yes.
Too high. Too high. Even too high. The trajectory of the ball. Even too high. 119.2. That's one of the most incredible numbers I've ever heard.
You'll have maybe he'll get it.
I wouldn't have believed it.
Maybe he'll get it put on a license plate like the pitcher that hit Chapman hit 106.
Yeah.
119.2.
Well, going to be a special player. I mean, people have to have patience because obviously, he hasn't gotten it done at the plate the way people would like to see it consistently from, in August and September. But
he also hit one 420 feet earlier in the game.
Yeah, this is special. When he makes his readjustment back to everything people are doing to him and gets his is a little more selective, it's going to be on, man. It's going to be
crap.
Well, we have a whole segment for the Reds later. Though.
I know. I thought that was worthy of chiming in for a moment.
That was breaking news. I like it. In fact, we got to get you a little breaking news logo thing, like. It just breaks in with the like we do on the local news. I'll be like, hold on, we got some breaking news to get to.
All right, you guys enjoy. Go back to what you were doing.
We are. I was talking about that 3rd and 18 play or whatever it was from the 3.
I can do that. I can do that. That's producer extraordinaire right there.
That's good. I mean, to do that right quick like that is something else. But yeah, back to that play. I thought that was kind of a backbreaker too. I think you keep them inside the 10, you're getting the ball in good field position, you're going in, you're going to score. And so that was a killer. And then the second drive of the second half. And the defense isn't going to be perfect the entire game. They're really not, but 75 yards, and it was a 75-yard scoring drive, led to a 17-6 lead. And 47 of those yards on the ground. It seemed like Oklahoma found something there and UC couldn't stop it. And that was a critical juncture in the game. And the other thing I would say negative about the defense, and again, I'm kind of nitpicking, but it looked like there were a lot of missed tackles again. And
I have a stat for you, George.
Okay.
I do have a stat on that. And it comes courtesy
because this team used to, now I know they're different players, but a couple of years ago, the UC defense, and they were loaded with NFL players. They never missed a tackle, and it spoiled me. And what I saw Saturday, I saw some missed tackles.
This comes from College Football Insider, CJ Vogel. I don't know. I sincerely doubt it's any relation to you, but he does spell it.
I know of, but there's a good chance I don't know all my relatives.
He covers Texas and OU, and he put this tweet out. Big 12 missed tackles through week 4. Cincinnati leads the Big 12 at 24 missed tackles, and that's first place is in the best. Oklahoma State has 56, and that's the worst.
So UC does not miss as many tackles as I'm perceiving.
24 on the season, so an average of 6 a game. At least according, and I don't know where he's getting. It's via PFF, so
okay.
that does come via.
I guess
PFF.
I stand corrected, but it sure seemed like a lot to me, and I guess maybe I'm just not used to it because of how darn good they were in the previous couple years at making tackles. I mean, it's like you see a missed tackle and you're like, "What's that?" So that, but that drive kind of bothered me too. That was a point in the game where the defense, and I know they were on the field a lot. They can't do it all. They got to get some help there. But overall, you hold that offense of Oklahoma to 20 points on the day. And if you told me Oklahoma scores 20, I'd be like, man, UC's got a really, really good shot at winning this game. I really would have thought they had a darn good shot winning that game if they hold that offense to 20. But it didn't happen, but it gives you a little hope, as this season plays out, that defense could do some special things.
One thing that bothered me on the offense that you didn't touch on, third down. 3 of 15 for the game. 2 of 7 on 3rd and long, which is 9+. 2 of 10 if you include anything 5+. That's
And
terrible.
that's where they're getting in trouble on 3rd down. They're
Right.
they're too long in situations for the most part. And, that's where, you're getting your butt kicked on 1st and 2nd down, and then 3rd down's really not makeable. That offense they've got to get that together. And 3rd down definitely was an issue, but part of it is because of what happened on 1st and 2nd down.
And then defense, another backbreaking play that stood out to me was that backwards pass that just happens to wobble itself right out of bounds. It just rolled lace over lace over lace.
Oh,
and
my
just
God.
went straight out of bounds. It's so strange. We've all seen footballs, the only ball in all of sports that's designed to take wonky angles and do weird things, and it just not once but twice rolls out of bounds in Oklahoma's favor, once on that backwards pass and once out of the back of the end zone on a ball that should have been kicked out of bounds on a kickoff. I have no idea how either of those two things happened, but both of those stood out to me as just insane plays.
Yeah, those were bad breaks, no doubt about it. And that would have been a big, big play if UC would have gotten their hands on that ball.
Yeah.
Another thing, what did you think about the
funky formation?
I think they got a field goal out of this drive. The Braden Smith 1st down throw. That kid can throw the ball, first of all.
He can.
I mean, he threw a nice ball there. I don't know if that was the right call at the right time, but by golly, if he completes that pass, I would have been all about it. But I guess I can't complain about it. But it seemed like they had something going. It's like that could break the momentum if you have an incompletion there. But I kind of like this coaching staff, rolling stuff out like that, not being afraid to go for that, because that would have been one hell of a deal if he would have completed that pass, and he's got a cannon. I give that kid a lot of credit for the way he throws. All right, here we go. Ellie doing his thing.
This is going to be the one that gets us demonetized.
Oh, my word. God, that was like a looping curveball, too. Jeez, Pete, he got every ounce of himself into that one.
Yep.
Whip the bat.
I think they were trying to get something going on that play, and they just were trying to make something happen in that situation. They haven't been able to score. They're trying to get the ball into the end zone. It's getting close to the red zone at that point in time.
Right.
Where the ball landed was definitely in the red zone. I believe it was even inside the 10 or close to the 10-yard line at that. And if he makes somebody miss or catches it maybe just another yard ahead of where the defender was, then he's breaking for the end zone and probably going to hit somebody on his way into the end zone, or at least get stopped just shy of the end zone. So they're doing everything they can to find the end zone on that play. I'm not mad about that play.
No, I'm not mad about it. I was just, it was an interesting call. It was an interesting time to try that when they were, moving the ball a little bit there. But I don't blame them for going for it for just the reasons you said. I mean, look, touchdowns have been at a premium here.
Right. Now, what did you think of the tackles running outside and out by the receivers when they're running?
Crazy. But I like
running,
that too, though.
They're running 3 offensive linemen with a quarterback and a halfback under in the middle, and then they're running.
You gotta try something that goes right back to what you.
And it worked.
Saying. Yes, it did work,
which was even crazier.
Well, yeah, and I give this coaching staff some props for trying something, right? And that worked, and they're searching for things that work. And I'm pretty sure Oklahoma didn't have that on their little card to be ready for.
And they had no idea what to do with it. You're running into a buzzsaw coming largely up the middle when they're blitzing, and this put Oklahoma on their heels, which they ran the ball on these plays too. They didn't pass the ball, which the whole thing, even going back and thinking about it, looking at it, just all of it just still doesn't make sense to me that both those plays gained positive yardage with Wilder and I forget who the other. It was D'Artagnan Tinsley, I think, on the tackles outside.
Yeah, it was very interesting, very interesting. And yeah, good for them for thinking of that. That was pretty cool. Now you go to BYU, and they talked about. I remember the last time they were out there, and I feel like the altitude and all that stuff does play a big factor out there. It really does, and I think it kind of cooked UC a little bit the last time they were out there. But UC is actually favored in this game, and BYU has a win at Arkansas. What are they? 3-1. But UC on the road, if I saw that right, are favored maybe by a couple of points, was a little bit surprised me. But
ESPN's FPI has them as 57.2% chance to win the game. And the line currently, according to Caesar, stands at -2 with an over-under of 48.5.
Okay. Well, if you talk about a team too, and I looked up a little bit on them, as much as UC has struggled in the red zone, have you seen what BYU does? BYU has been in the red zone 15 times this season. They've scored all 15, 12 have been touchdowns. Talk about a team that knows how to finish drives. That's getting it done. In fact, they may be, I can't imagine there's many teams better than that in the country right now, in that kind of performance in the red zone. So that's the complete opposite of the UC offense. But they're not a dominant team, and I think it's going to be an interesting game on Friday night. And we'll see if the old Bearcats can bounce back on the road here after a couple tough ones at home.
Yeah, the quarterback Keaton Slovis played for Pitt last year, and Satterfield saw him last year in action, so he's at least familiar with the tape on Slovis. And then Daniel Greshik played for Utah State last season, and they played BYU as well. And he's obviously familiar as having studied tape and played them last season. So you have at least a couple guys between Satterfield and Greshik who are familiar. You're not completely unfamiliar with this BYU team going into Provo on a short week. But everybody talks about how Cincinnati has to play on a short week, and they're coming off Oklahoma. BYU is coming off a loss on a short week as well. So they're not in a great position themselves. I know you talk about them scoring in the red zone. Maybe Coach Satterfield can talk with their coach after the game and see what's
exactly.
working for them.
They'll be tearing into all that game film this week, or already have. Maybe they saw some things there that'll help their offense, because that's just amazing, that statistic. And we'll see. UC got the win at Pitt. We'll see if they can do the same at BYU. It'd be a nice win for them and a nice little bounce back. And Coach Satterfield admitted that getting that first Big 12 win is a big deal, and it is. And then being the first of the new teams in the Big 12 to get a Big 12 win would be kind of nice. So we'll see if they can pull off that feat, and then maybe gear up and make some good things happen the rest of this season. But a lot of people were down after the Oklahoma thing, and not everyone was seeing silver linings, and I see some. You want to win those games. You play these games to win them, not to feel good that you played hard and that oh well, we didn't win. But
there's no moral victories.
Silver linings in there. I think the defense played pretty darn well most of the game.
BYU, their most points they scored all season was 41. They did hang 38 up in that win against Arkansas that you were talking about. They scored 27 against Kansas. They have not ran the ball very well, averaging 61 yards per game rushing, and passing only averaging 263. They average 164 yards less offense than Cincinnati. As far as defense goes,
you wonder how the hell they get it done in the red zone. Then that's crazy.
That is crazy. But their defense, Cincinnati's defense giving up 336 yards per game. Their defense giving up 326 yards per game. So similar defenses as far as statistically anyway. So it'll be, I don't know. I think it's gonna be a rock fight, if you ask me. I am envious of anybody who does make the trip out to Provo. I know the party scene or any type of Um, if you're trying to have an adult beverage out that way is difficult at best.
Yes.
That said, the views I think make up for all of that tenfold. So I'm just a little jealous of the atmosphere that you're going to get to take in with BYU.
Yeah, I'm going to have to get out there sometime. We thought about going to this one, but it just didn't like line up properly. So, there's going to be other chances.
Right.
They'll play them again out there, and hopefully I can get out there and take in some of that scenery.
I agree.
'Cause I've been to Salt Lake. I've been which right up the road. Basically, it's part of Salt Lake is University of Utah, which that's that there's some scenery there too. Great scenery there. And they hosted the Olympics. In fact, I think when I was out there, they still had the Olympic flame cauldron at that stadium. They may still have it there. I'm sure they probably do. But I was out there. I was out there for the old Bob Huggins and Chuck Maychok thing when they both got tossed out of the NCAA game against Gonzaga. And what a day that was. And Bob goes walking out right past. I'm sitting. We had these weird little tables by the court. And Bob, I may have said something to him when they were marching him out. I can't remember. But I was sitting next to Cincinnati's sports information director, the great Tom Hathaway. And after they took Bob back, I'm like, Tom, you better go back and see what they're, where they're putting this guy. And he had to sit in this locker room that they had him in. And it was a little just dilapidated locker room. And he got to watch the television on a screen that was like this big. It was unbelievable. And you're thinking, an NCAA game, you're the head coach, and you're watching it on one of the worst screens in the country. But that's what happens when you get tossed out. And then 10 minutes later, they're walking Chuck out at the end of the court, tossing him out a door onto the screen because he let the ref have it that threw Hugs out of the game. Boy, that was you can find some fun in Utah when things like that happen.
Yeah, I'm sure Bob had no issues getting his hands on any adult beverages out in Utah.
No, you got that right. We didn't either. My photographer, I remember, he brought this like pint of Jack Daniels, and we went out to this bar. Well, then I'm driving him home, and we didn't drink that much at the bar. And we're dropping this other dude off a Cincinnati native who was living in Salt Lake, and we dropped him off at his place. And he and my photographer popped open that pint of Jack. And that thing was gone when I got back to the hotel. So the next day, during that game at halftime, I go back in the media room, and my photographer is laid out asleep on the floor. In the media room was this practice gym. So there was a lot of area there. And he was laid down on the floor just snoozing at halftime of that bat. Had no idea what's going on in the game. So I had to fill him in and kind of babysit him the rest of the day. And it turned out to be a hell of a day because Bob got booted, UC lost, Chuck got booted. It was crazy. Crazy day.
That's amazing that you were there for all of that.
Oh, yeah, funny.
But
yeah, at the time you don't appreciate how funny that stuff is. And I remember one of the beat reporters, he's looking all harried, and he's like, and I passed him in the hallway after all this stuff had happened and the post games were over. And I looked at him, I go, this is some funny stuff. And I don't think I said stuff, but then he walks on by me, these stops. He goes, hey, George, you know what? You're right. This is some funny stuff. And he talked to me later like he was feeling all this stress about all this stuff going on. And it's like, you know what? I should have fun with this because this is funny. This never happens.
No.
Historic moment. Maybe not one of the brighter moments in UC history, but it's something people remember.
And wasn't it Mo who kept running track of how long it had been since, or was it Dan?
Yeah,
Dan kept track.
Running track of how many games Chuck made it without getting tossed out. I don't think Mrs. Chuck liked that very much, but Chuck didn't care at all. He thought it was funny. Chuck thought it was funny.
Well, you got us talking about basketball and the basketball schedule for the first inaugural season for the Big 12 for these Cincinnati Bearcats came out today. November, you have UIC, most of these at home. UIC at home, Detroit Mercy at home as part of the MTE, Eastern Washington at home as part of the MTE. Then you have Northern Kentucky at home, Georgia Tech at home, at Howard, and that wraps up your November. Anything stick out to you there, George?
Northern Kentucky game after what happened last year, right?
Right.
If you're UC, you got to circle that game. And then out of all those, obviously, the biggest one is probably Georgia Tech, but it might be Northern Kentucky, given what happened last year. I mean,
you can't lose that game again.
I mean, and there were a lot of people. I know that night that they played, a lot of people were flying out to that Maui Invitational and getting off that plane and, firing up their phones and finding out, oh, my God, we flew all the way to Hawaii to watch a team that just lost to NKU. Not that they anything from NKU, obviously another good season for them. And they had a lot of good veteran players on that team. And, boy, they stuck it to UC over there last year, no doubt about it.
Then you have in December, Florida Gulf Coast at home, the Crosstown Shootout at X. At home against Bryant. You have the Dayton game at the Heritage Bank Center. You have at home against Merrimack, at home against Stetson, and at home against Evansville wraps up your December.
Not a lot of excitement in those games at Fifth Third that you see there.
Right.
Bryant, good program there, but the rest. But obviously, the game that stands out there is the Shootout and Dayton, both not at Fifth Third. They're at although that says at Xavier, then it says Cincinnati Fifth Third Arena. That's a mistake on there.
I agree.
Yeah, they're trying to win. And I think they're trying to win at Cintas for the first time since like 2003 or something. It's been a while.
Well, Cincinnati did win in the TBT at Cintas, so perhaps perhaps
I overlook that.
Perhaps
overlook the basketball tournament.
Perhaps that set the tone, though, for what's to come.
We shall see. But man, it's been a generation since they've won it on the Xavier campus.
Then you open up Big 12 play at BYU in January. At home against Texas, at Baylor, at home against TCU, at home against Oklahoma, at Kansas, and at home against UCF, and at West Virginia. A lot of games in January.
That's a great schedule right there. Hallelujah for the Big 12. I mean, that you look at the names on there and the programs and what those teams have done, and wow, that's great to see. Definitely great to see, and not going to be easy.
No, not even a little bit. Then February,
get those two bigs eligible, but I don't know if that's going to happen.
February, you have at Texas Tech, at home against Houston, at home against Iowa State, at UCF, at home against Oklahoma State, at TCU, at Houston. So Houston twice that month.
Yep, and we know what they're all about.
All too well.
Yep.
Then to finish it out in March, you have at home against Kansas State, at Oklahoma, at home against West Virginia, and then the Big 12 tournament March 12th.
Yep, out in Kansas City. That'll be a lot of fun. It's really cool to see that, in print. And,
right.
And it's arrived, and it's coming at us real fast. Another month we'll be in the basketball season, and then a month after that, you're into that Big 12, and that's big time basketball, no doubt about it. We'll see if the Cats are ready to go right out of the gate, because that's asking a lot. But that's, you remember back in the old Big East, and if you went 500 in that old Big East, you were pretty much guaranteed a spot in the NCAA tournament because you had so many big wins under your belt. I mean, that gets you ready to play in that NCAA tournament, and you find out a lot about your team playing that kind of competition. And it's great to see UC back in a conference like that where, every game, it seems like a big game coming in.
Yeah, I think Chad was saying earlier tonight, 21 games are against tier 1 or tier 2 programs. So
right. And the past couple of years, they've hardly had any of those on the schedule.
Mhm.
So it's
Yep.
going to be quite a change.
Yep. Switching gears completely, the Cincinnati Bengals last night on Monday Night Football get their first win. Joe Burrow was active, although looking a bit of a shell of himself. I don't think he played a great game. Still somehow ended up with 259 yards, throwing it almost 50 times, which is bananas to me.
That's surprising. Yeah, that they threw that much and threw a lot in the first half.
Yeah. But they do get the win 1916 against the Super Bowl champion LA Rams in a rematch of the Super Bowl from just 2 short seasons ago. What were your takeaways, your initial takeaways of this game, George?
Well, first of all, it's just good to get a win. You can't go 0-3. And
No.
you know, Burrow said that went into some of his thinking about, do I play, do I not? And he felt like he couldn't not play and let them go out there. And then, you know, you go 0-3. But it was good to see him get a little more comfortable, it seemed like, as the game went on. Now, he didn't necessarily feel that, but it looked that way. And then, you know, he rolled out a couple times. That one play he rolled out on that was sweet. They ran that bootleg, and he said after the game, he didn't know if he could do it or not till he did it. You know, he wasn't sure that he could make that play, but he did. He got out of it unscathed. There's no tweaking of that calf or anything. So the Bengals came out ahead on that deal. I think, you know, a lot of passing in the first half was Joe kind of switching out of running plays because of stuff he saw defensively that maybe he could take advantage of. And I felt like it was great to see them make a concerted effort to get the ball to Jamar Chase. I mean, there was no doubt. There's no doubt he's the playmaker. Not the only one on that team, but the best one on that team. And that's a guy you have to somehow find ways to get him the ball and let him do what he does. 141 yards on 12 receptions. He had 12 receptions on 15 targets. You know, the man's a go-getter. And I think Joe Burrow felt like he needed to make a concerted effort to make sure Jamar got more involved.
I think the difference on
what's that?
On the Jamar Chase front,
Yeah.
I think the difference is the fact that they actually schemed him off the sideline. They were able to do some things going over the middle, and that made a huge difference. I have been talking about that the last 2 weeks, and I think that made a giant difference for both Chase and for Burrow.
I think Chase may have been, you know, he does it. I mean, he's a smart guy, isn't going to make waves like that. But I think even he was like, come on, we've got to do something different here for me to get more involved in this game because, you know, obviously he's a big-time player and loves to be involved in big-time games. And that was a big-time game last night because you go 0-3, you're in big, big trouble. But, you know, the headline, Burrow sacked twice, but he held up. He's not hurt any worse. Hopefully this thing keeps getting better. But at least he seemed, to me, to be a little more confident in it and a little more comfortable playing with that injury that hopefully does not nag him for the entire season because I thought he looked pretty good. Joe Mixon was big in some big moments in that game, scored the touchdown, which was really a sweet play. And then the defense. Good old Lou Anarumo, baby, dialed up another winner for the Bengals because that was a slugfest. Some call it a boring game, not a lot going on, but it was tight all the way. So every play, you're sitting there going, holy crap, you know, this would mean, you know, every play meant something in that game. And, you know, Trey Hendrickson just did what he seems to do more often than not. Big time plays by him. The whole defensive line was great in that game.
They were.
You know, you control what they did at the line of scrimmage. You're going to more often than not come out with a win, and they were able to do that. Logan Wilson continues to show up, play well. That interception was darn sweet he had. Dak Hill. I've been wondering about these safeties, and if
Logan had two.
two, yes, that's right, two. The one was the one they reviewed. What a play by him! What a play! But yeah, he's a big time player for them too. What a find they got when they drafted him. But Dax Hill, I thought the safeties, Dax played pretty well, and that humongous sack he had was probably something to get him going a little more now. And again, it all goes back to the guy who, I mean, I think the world of Lou. I think Lou's a really good coach, and I hope he's still around next year. But I got a feeling someone's finally going to wake up and see him for what he is, and I think he's definitely head coaching material.
I think it was Dax Hill's best game of his career, his short career at this point. It's only his second season, but I think he definitely flashed all over the place the whole game. That said, I think it's crazy that we're in a place where our defensive line had a better game than an Aaron Donald defensive line, which Hendrickson would have had a bigger game if anyone would ever throw a flag on anyone who's guarding Hendrickson.
There's some truth to that for sure.
He gets held about as much as Jawan Briggs and Dante Corleone get held. So I think that's the point that we're at right now. Defense had a fantastic game. Anytime you hold anybody to 16 points and Tutu Atwell and the Puka Nakua, they've both been having fantastic seasons up to this point, and you held them fairly quiet, only holding this offense to 16 points when their high this season is 30 at this point. Stafford had a pretty efficient day, having 269 on only 33 passes as opposed to Joe's 50. But again, you did what you needed to do. You put the offense on the field far more times than the Rams defense, and you got to win at home in a whiteout. I think that these jerseys look better than the Color Rush jerseys. Personally, I love that they do the field up. I love that the aerial shots of the stadium completely whited out. I don't think it would have looked the same in a day game as opposed to a night game. Correct. And you also have to give a shout out to Chad Ochocinco. Yeah. And he gets into the Ring of Honor, and plenty of former Bengals staff and players in town for that. And it was also Boomer, right?
Yep. Boomer and Chad went into the biggest personalities in that franchise's history. I mean, those are two guys that you knew were in the locker room, you knew were on the team, and their personalities are a little different. Chad's the flashy guy and all that, but Boomer, man, he's a big personality, and he was a leader. He had a quarterback personality that was, bigger than life, and you still see him going strong on the studio show for CBS and doing his thing there. And
well, he's got the radio show out in New York as well.
Yes, and those guys are two big personalities. It was great night, and you brought up those jerseys and the whiteout and the uniforms, and I got to tell you, like the first time I saw the white helmets and all that, I'm like, I was kind of lukewarm on it all. I really liked it last night. I mean, they grew on me, and that's right. But I'm so partial to the orange and black helmet. But with that, the white pants, the white shirt, that white helmet looks so cool. That looked really, really good. It's grown on me, and I'm not a big uniform guy that sits around and nitpicks and I like this jersey better than that one, and this one has these stripes. But that looked really cool. That I'm looking at, I'm like, dang, I really like these now. And I when they first did it, I thought, oh man, this just doesn't look good at all. But grew on me. Someone was right who came up with that.
Jeff brought up in the chat, he thought it was awesome they rocked Burrow and Chase jerseys instead of their own.
That is awesome. No doubt about it. That's very cool. Two cool guys, man. They were fun to cover. And like I said, they were different. Chad was more the, entertainer and all that. Boomer was not all business, and he understood. I mean, he understood the television and the broadcast business from an early age. He did an internship when he was in college at at Maryland and worked with he worked with a lady named Gail Sierens, who I believe was the first lady to call an NFL game on network television back in the day. And so he kind of knew the business. While we're covering him, he kind of knew what we wanted. And I said this to the Bengals a while back. They were asking about Boomer and just some info on him. And when we were at the Super Bowl down in Miami, he would come through the hotel lobby every night and see the local guys. We were all kind of hanging out, just seeing what was going on. And we were all at the same hotel at that point. And he would ask us, do you need anything? Do you need an interview or anything you need from me? And finally, about the third night of this, I'm like, Boomer, what are you doing? Like, what's going on? You did your media thing this morning. He's like, well, you guys have been with us all season. You're with us now. I just want to make sure we take care of you guys and you get everything you want. Class act. And, not people.
Yes.
People don't see that. And that was a class act by a guy who, was the MVP that year. So that always stuck with me about him, that he understood what we had to do. And by golly, he helped us all he could. Good man.
Nice. So you had brought up when we were discussing Joe Burrow's injury that Ja'Marr Chase may have been the smartest one in the room, as he was saying way back before the season began that Joe should have been sitting out. Ja'Marr Chase goes back and reiterates those same statements this week as we're looking ahead to Monday Night Football, and he still says that Joe should have been sitting out. He ends up with a huge day, obviously. Joe, again, he looked off all night by my estimation. There's obviously, when you're going against Aaron Donald and some different things there, maybe he doesn't quite have 100% confidence in his offensive line yet at this point. But he just looked very uncomfortable between the injury and just the line. But do you think that Ja'Marr Chase is still the smartest man in the room as he continues to beat the drum that Joe should be out? And that means that Browning would be in, unless you're bringing up A.J. McCarron, who a ghost from Bengals past is back on the team.
I know. I don't know what to make of that either. God, I don't know who's the answer there, but hopefully Joe Burrow's the answer and he can keep playing without hurting this thing or tweaking it. And it looked like they had it wrapped up a little more last night too. It just looked like there was more going on that leg than what had been going on in previous games. And
I read somewhere from a doctor that she's a Twitter doctor, so who knows what that actually means. But she said that he had just a wrap around it to restrict blood flow and all of that, and then also said that he had a massaging apparatus of some sort on the sidelines, and she worried that from the camera angles that she saw, she worried that leg looked a bit atrophied, but she couldn't 100% say that it was indeed atrophied, but she just said it appeared as such. But that was just her estimation, not her putting that in brick or anything like that.
Well, my guess is he said he got out. There was no tweaking or anything. My guess is he'll just continue to play right now and hope that thing becomes less and less of an issue. Certainly the Bengals have to hope that because do they win with him not in the game last night? I don't know that they do.
I agree.
They do. I don't think they do. Like you said, the numbers weren't eye-popping or anything like that. But the dude is really good at managing the game, getting them in the right things, he's processes stuff football-wise. His football IQ is ridiculous.
He's brilliant. Yes.
It's like computer-esque that he can, look at what he sees across the line and know exactly what's going to happen and where to go. And that's hard to replace. I mean, those guys don't grow on trees. There's not very many of them that do it that well in the history of the game, really. So I tell you what, I give him a lot of credit for going out there and doing it. It would have been easy to say, I need a couple more weeks. I tweaked this thing and I'm worried I'm going to make it worse. No, he saw 0-2 and he's like, I can't let this team go 0-3, because if we're 0-3, what the hell does it matter if I come back? We may be buried. And now here they are with the one win. They should, Tennessee, they're a slight favorite there. You hope they go down there and able to take care of business, and maybe Tennessee will look like Tennessee did against Cleveland, because the Browns just waxed them. Now, Browns defense is special too, as we saw in that Bengals game. They're the real deal, and this division battle is going to be so heated, and the Bengals aren't out of it.
No,
they got the 2 losses, but they're not out of it. It's what a division. This is going to be tough to win it, but I still think they can. But Joe's got to stay healthy, and they're going to have to manage. I mean, they're going to have to. They get up in a game, they're going to have to pull his butt out, make sure something doesn't happen. They got to be smart about this. But I think he's going to continue to try to play after what we saw last night.
I think they need to give Joe Mixon the ball a little bit more. He has shown through 3 games, every time he touches the ball, I feel like he touches it with an energy unmatched by anybody else on the field.
He's bringing something this year. There's something. I don't know if it's the doubts about whether they were going to bring him back. And I don't think the Bengals ever gave him that message. But he reads stuff. He hears stuff. Yeah. People like, God, he's not worth that much money, in this, and they should probably cut him, bring in another running back to it. He heard all that talk, and he came in with a purpose this season, and he's running with a purpose. He's surprised me a little bit. I always, not that I thought he was chopped liver, but he's running with a renewed purpose, it looks like.
I think this Tanner Hudson kid that they picked up along the way at tight end, he brought something that I have not seen at tight end since Hayden Hurst was here last season. And then the other note I have, T. Higgins has got to figure some shit out. He had a terrible game.
Oh my God. I don't know what's going on there.
I don't know if he's wrapped up in these contract talks. I don't know if.
I don't know either. That's certainly the first thing that jumps in your head. But there's something going on there. But that's not
franchise tag. If he's worried about the franchise tag and what that could potentially mean, not wanting to put it all out on the field in a contract year, essentially. I don't know what was going on with him, but that's not going to be. You can't build on that. That's not a game. That's a game you want to put behind you and look back.
What did he have? Like 2 catches last night?
On 8 targets.
Yeah, 8 targets, 2 catches. I don't know how many drops he had in there, but there was one that was, it almost stuck in his chest, and it ended up on the turf. So, yeah, I don't know what's going on there, but he's got to figure that out. And the Bengals have to figure that out. But we'll see. Hopefully they get the 2-2 after the trip to Tennessee, and things start looking up a little more for them.
Yes, you can certainly build on that Tennessee win as well with Arizona, another away game after that. So we'll definitely be keeping our eye out on all of that. But good to finally get a win.
No doubt about it.
Speaking of wins. I was going to say, speaking of wins, the Reds, it looks like, did get the win. I think it's over here.
Yep, 11-7, Redlegs.
There you go.
Still alive, but barely. I think Fangraphs has them at like a 7.5% chance to make the playoffs now. I mean, they got to win out. They blew it over the weekend, blowing a 9-0 lead and losing to Pittsburgh. That's one. With everything that game meant and this stretch has meant, and that's, it's probably one of the worst regular season losses in team history when you think of it, of what's going on and
what's on the line. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a terrible, terrible loss. And it was capped a 4-game losing streak at a point where they can't afford losses like that. And God bless them for winning Sunday, but it was almost too little too late, and they got to win out, and even that may not be enough.
Well, and that's coming on the heels when they were up. Even the game on Friday, they were up before Pittsburgh scores 3 after in the 2 in the 7th and 1 in the 9th to win Friday night 7-5.
They blew that one. Yep.
you can't lose games like that in the last week of the season when you're in contention but don't have anything locked up.
Right. No,
Um,
I guess the bottom line is they're just not good enough yet, and their bullpen just looked terrible in that game Saturday night. But they're out of gas. I mean,
they're who's in the bullpen right now? Even
yeah, I mean, they're just out of gas. I mean, there's nothing left, and we'll see how they finish it out. But they're going to end up 20 games better than last year, so it's a start.
I think Slaughter got a couple innings Saturday night, didn't he?
Yeah, he should have. He should have. He's ambidextrous, I think. He can pitch left
Right.
and right. They
Just
don't have
switch
to
the glove. Yeah.
exactly. He can do it all out there. But yeah, still reason for hope. Yes, they got to. It's going to be an off season where they better gather some. They better gather some pitching. And I don't know if we've seen the last of Joey Votto yet or not. What do you think? He come back? I mean, they're not going to bring him back for $25 million or whatever it is.
right. No.
Play on the $7 million buyout. I don't know what happens there.
This is one of those heart versus head questions, right? Because your heart, you want him here, and you want him to not look like he looked this season. But even at $7 million,
I know.
How much sense does that make?
You would have to put him in probably a DH role, or I don't know. And do you want to do that? I don't know.
I don't think it's bad for the locker room to have him there, even at $7 million. I think that he continues to show, and as you potentially transition him into a role as a management role of some sort here, because I think that he has so much to offer in that regard, whether it be as an actual team manager or as any type of coaching position for that matter. I think that he has so much knowledge to just in a way that he can just impart that knowledge on players that they're actually accepting of it, as opposed to just barking at them what they need to do. That's kind of the difference between a Joey Votto and a Pete Alonso.
Well, hearing him talk in depth about hitting is look, I've followed baseball, played baseball, all that, and when he gets deep into it, it is unbelievable. There's stuff he talks about I've never considered, thought about. It's just, and it's funny. He knows when he's getting deep with it, and it's oh my God, this is levels I didn't know existed.
Yeah,
of thinking about this and how, oh my God, it's fascinating. It is fascinating what he knows about hitting.
Regardless, right now they stand at 80 after the win. They're 81-77. They are playing into the last week of the season where it's still meaningful baseball. They did this with a roster littered top to bottom with guys playing their very first major league season. And you put all that together, and they've exceeded all of our expectations. And
without a doubt. I mean, I thought they might have another 100-loss season unless, Green, Lodolo, and Ashcraft had big seasons. None of them had what would be termed a big season, and they're 20 games better than last year.
Ashcraft, you could argue Ashcraft had a big season.
Yeah, okay. I'll give you that. But boy, in totality to what I expected they would need, I expected they would need to carry most of the load.
I wonder how much money you could have made if you would have teased the over-under on win total to over 500. 81 and a half.
I put 5 for them to win over 65.
Right. That's what I'm saying. The number
I made
was 64 and a half.
I made 50 on 5 on that.
Yeah.
Just a little stupid bet.
Right.
Tease that bad boy up to 81 and a half. I mean, you probably could have made $500.
Probably.
I would have never imagined they would do that.
No.
Yeah, you're right.
No.
You could have made a fortune.
This was supposed to be about the young guys slowly trickling up.
Yeah.
And maybe by the All-Star break or by call-ups, some of these guys were here, and what was it, June? May, everybody was here, it felt like.
My biggest fear is that they fall in love with this idea that they can do this every season, and I don't want them to think that because they caught lightning in a bottle this season that they can continue to do this without making a splash signing or 6 next year, because I think you need that many for your bullpen, for your starting pitching. You have to find some pitching depth, and we've talked ad nauseum at that.
Yeah, and if
Thus
they
far.
don't know, they'll never know, because look at what's gone on this season with them. And you can never, ever have too much pitching. You just
No.
can't. And they're going to have a lot of money freed up. And there is
Right.
no excuse this offseason. They've got to go out and get it done. And boy, if they don't, it's going to be a shame, because they're wasting a hell of an opportunity, because this is a team that could do some real damage if they have some help on that mound.
I agree. So we'll see what happens. They're mathematically not out of it. They will have to win out, in addition for some other things kind of falling into place.
They need
but
some help.
As things currently stand, they are, as far as the wild card goes, 2 games back. I think there are still some games going on.
Yeah, I saw the Cubs.
So,
were leading.
Well, no, the Cubs just dropped a can of corn fly ball to right field, and the Braves now lead the Cubs 7-6. So
How about that?
I mean, just a can of corn, George. Camped
That's
under
the
it.
kind of stuff the Reds need to have happen, man.
Camped under it, and it just
Maybe.
dropped.
Maybe that's a sign. Maybe the Cubs are going to flub it up this last week.
I mean, that's a bit like you got the Braves on the ropes. Like they had a big lead in that game,
right.
and you
I thought it
just
was like
drop a
5-0
routine fly ball.
or something.
Yeah,
I don't
drop
know.
a routine fly ball. Now you're down 7-6. Ooh.
Well, you still have
It's getting things are getting tight in Chicago.
Let's hope it continues to get tight.
Miami is 1 game back. The Chicago Cubs and Arizona Diamondbacks tied at for those 2nd and 3rd wild card spots. But stranger things have happened in September.
Yeah, no, they have. The Reds just got to take care of their business and see what happens. That's all they can do now.
You got 4 more games left, as we talked about. 1 more in Cleveland before 3 to finish out the season. A 3-game series in St. Louis.
I got to think St. Louis kind of wants to spoil the Reds' party.
Sure.
Yep.
Sure.
No doubt.
So that's the Reds, though. FC Cincinnati, anything there that you need to cover
Still
this
cooking,
week?
man. No, they're in great shape. They're gonna, they're gonna have the most points in the league. They're blowing out the Eastern Conference. What do they got? They're like up 11 points or something. Coming down the stretch, just a few games left. They picked up they had a win, so 5 points in 3 games last week, and they play on the road at Toronto this Saturday. So they're skating to the playoffs, and looks like there'll be a lot of playoff action at TQL Stadium, barring some kind of disaster.
They got an award this week, didn't they? The fans get an award, or the stadium get an award?
Yeah, I forget what that was too. I did see that. I saw if I get their alerts on my iPhone or my iWatch.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I saw it on there, but I didn't get in depth in it. High school football, not a lot of big games this week, but the Pit at Elder hosting Moeller. That's the best game on the docket, and that should be one heck of a game, I would think. Also worth mentioning, Purcell Marion has the new stadium now at the school, first time this year, Staubach Stadium. And Roger was there for the opener, but this is homecoming, hosting CHCA. I may have to make a move and go over there and see that, because I haven't been to a game at that stadium yet. And yes, Chad's Lloyd Juggernauts roll on. They're 6-0. We'll be 7-0 after a game at Pendleton County this week. How about
Fight
that?
on, you Juggernauts, fight, carry on to victory. The only school in the nation with the nickname Juggernauts.
How about that? I wonder how many schools have the nickname G-Men, like my Georgetown G-Men.
Probably just them.
Yeah, that would be nice. I should know that, but I'm guessing that may be the case. But yeah, Lloyd.
I'm going to get to a game at Lloyd.
In Northern Kentucky. Covcath is, and that's probably about it.
I'm going to get to a game at Lloyd before this regular season comes to an end.
Find one. Maybe we should go to one together.
I'm in.
All right.
I'm in.
We'll look at the schedule. We'll try to make that happen.
Here, hold on.
Jeff said his Wyoming Cowboys are 73 straight.
They're and going to be 74 this week, but I don't want to disparage, Deer Park. Yeah, Wyoming has just owned that Cincinnati Hills League for so long. Amazing program. Aaron does a great job up there. They've been cooking forever up there.
Two home games left, George.
Yeah,
Lexington Catholic, the 13th. Lexington Catholic, who's usually a powerhouse, they're 2.
yeah, they are.
They're 2-4.
So they're having an off year.
And then Bourbon County.
I may have to go see Bourbon County.
Who's 0-4.
Bourbon.
I mean, that's your people, Bourbon County.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, let me know what lines up for you. Maybe we'll hit one of those two then.
Well, the 13th, no. They have the homecoming's the 14th. We'll have to see what that Iowa State kickoff is.
Yes.
If that's noon, it's going to be rough. But if it's later, that could be feasible.
Okay, we'll see. We'll play it by ear.
Love it.
Go see the Jugs.
All right. You got anything else then, George?
I think it's been a hell of a week. I wish there had been more wins, but at least the Bengals got it done. The Reds got it done tonight. I'm good to go for another week.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up.
BYU.
That was another episode of George in the Jungle. Friday night, BYU. And then the Bengals will be at Tennessee. We'll see what the Reds can do in this last 4 days on the playoff push. But we will see you next Tuesday night, 9:00 on George in the Jungle. He's George. I'm Aaron. And we're out of here.